Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rewatch. My name is Samuel,
And my name is Jayden.
and this is a YouTube channel where we talk about movies. We do podcasts on various movies and TV shows. Today, we have decided to watch Star Wars, the new series, The Acolyte. We're obviously big Star Wars fans. We've covered a lot of Star Wars content on this channel.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't watched The Acolyte up until this very point today. We've just watched the first 4 episodes, and we're going to give you our review of the series so far.
Yep.
Jayden, you're a big Star Wars fan.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
What were your expectations going into this?
Expectations going into The Acolyte were, how do I say it? Low, if I'm being honest. And look, I think a lot of people out there they won't watch this show. They'll pass commentary on it without even watching it.
Yeah.
But we went through the torture of watching this show.
We sat down. We watched it from beginning to end.
Gave it a chance.
Yeah. We weren't on our phones or anything.
No.
We gave it our full undivided attention.
Undivided attention.
We spoke through it, when we encountered plot holes, like within the first 30 seconds.
Yep.
We consulted each other and
Yep.
we moved forward.
Yep.
So that we were on the same page.
And that's what these critics have been saying, is give it a chance, then pass your commentary on
Absolutely.
it. We've done that, so I feel like
Absolutely.
we're entitled to discuss it now.
Yes. So let's discuss it. Let's just give it a brief sort of plot synopsis. What if someone was to say to you, what is The Acolyte about? What's the central plot line of The Acolyte? What would you say?
Okay. I'm going to try really hard to
Okay.
describe this. Okay, so twins Osha and May, who were born from a witch covenant or whatever you want to call it, May is an acolyte hunting down 4 Jedi from her past because some dark side user is telling her to kill these people. Is that pretty good?
Yeah, I think you covered all the bases there.
Yeah. It's hard to put it in some sort of linear format, like describing the synopsis in a sentence or so, because there's so much going on that just doesn't make sense. So the only way that I can describe it is what I've just said, where I've just pieced all of these things together, which don't really function.
Yeah. For me, these Disney Plus shows from Star Wars in particular, but also the Marvel shows, they're not TV shows in the sense that a TV show like House of the Dragon, for instance, will have a main plot line. It will have a main conflict,
Yep.
but there will also be subplots. So there'll be side characters going through their own sort of separate journeys, encountering separate plot sort of conflicts that aren't particularly, on the same path as that linear story.
Yep.
Whereas these Disney Plus shows, they just have the linear story. There's no side adventures.
No.
It's 20 minutes long in terms of the episode length.
Mm-hmm.
The main story, the only story
Yeah,
in this show is you have these 2 twins.
Yep.
And they don't like each other, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they love each other, but sometimes they want to kill each other. They, so one of them wanted to be a Jedi, one of them wanted to be a witch.
Yeah.
And that decision led to someone starting a fire, and that killed a lot of people. And I just can't even.
It's hard to. It's hard to piece it all together, because it just feels like so disconnected. Like that, it feels like they don't even know what they're writing.
Yeah. It was almost like.
And I think that's why we're jumping in because this all happens in episode 3. We're jumping in at episode 3 because the first 2 episodes nothing happens.
Yeah.
Like, there's no significant plot in those first 2 episodes. It's just a bunch of rubbish. And I think that's the main takeaway from the show, is that, you can have all your discussions about racism, you can have your discussions about sexism, about gender equality or sexual orientation, but the main issue with this show is the writing. It just doesn't make sense, and I think you're on the same page with me there.
Yeah, for me, look, we'll discuss more of the Star Warsy aspects.
Yep.
We'll dive into the lore and some of the pre-existing characters that show up in this show.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to say at the outset that even watching Kenobi and Boba Fett and those Disney Plus shows that we would say are terrible,
Yep.
I could sort of track each character's motives and feel their emotions, what they're thinking. You know, they may not be saying anything on screen, but I know how Kenobi is feeling, or I know how, you know, Princess Leia is feeling in the moment. Even if it's bad writing,
Yep.
the story isn't great, I know I can expect her decision making. Whereas in this show, I felt that I never at any single point knew or had some sort of confidence that I understood a character.
Yep.
A single character.
Yep.
No character was, in my opinion, well constructed.
Yep. And I think that's the main issue with this, is that we have our issues with Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, Mando Season 3. You haven't watched it, but I can vouch that it's not good. At least those shows had some depth in storytelling. Like, they had something going for them. You know, you felt Obi-Wan's conflict. It was there. I didn't like the show, but I can respect that at least they did something.
Yeah.
This show is so badly put together. It is insane. Like, it is a new level of bad. Like, Obi-Wan was bad, but there's like bad.
Yeah.
And that is what the Acolyte is.
For me, I don't think I can recall a single piece of dialogue that we listened to, experienced, that felt natural.
No.
That felt like two characters living in this world, living in the Star Wars world, and having a conversation. I just felt like they were all machines of the plot.
Yep.
And characters would only have conversations if it served the plot.
Yep.
And that happens sometimes when you need to, you know, provide some exposition. The trick is you have to do it in such a way that is not obvious. Whereas this show has the subtlety of a sledgehammer when it comes to exposition.
Yep.
In fact, most of the dialogue exchanges in this show are, look, I know that you're really upset with your sister right now, but you must understand that we have a mission to do, and it is the Jedi's purpose or the Jedi's mission to do X, Y, and Z, because the Jedi are X, Y, and Z,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
It's exposition that's been put into the dialogue, and it just, none of it worked. I mean, the performances aren't great, but if they don't have the good dialogue, how can you ask an actor to get invested in this world when it's just so clunky and mechanical? I mean, the prequels are one thing with having the sort of soap opera-like dialogue,
Yep.
but the world building was there and all the other elements were there that just let you buy in enough. Whereas with this, I can't really point to anything, any particular part, you know, maybe the visuals, the music, whatever, and say they did a good job with that.
Yep. And we've openly criticized George Lucas Star Wars. You know, we're not those sort of people that praise George Lucas Star Wars as it's you know, there's nothing wrong with it, because there is. Attack of the Clones is a bad movie, right? But like you said, it has an element there of its world building that offers something. For me, the Acolyte offers nothing. Like, there is genuinely nothing in this where I can say, hey, they did that pretty good. And that's a shame, because it's borderline unwatchable to some standard. And yeah, I'm sort of lost for words, because it's really frustrating knowing that Star Wars is genuinely kind of over. There's no
Yes.
redemption here anymore.
Indeed. Let's look at the technical aspects. The visuals. We've seen some great visuals in Star Wars over the years. I think of the visual effects in the prequels, groundbreaking stuff. Even the visual effects in the original trilogy really pushed the envelope in terms of CGI and visual storytelling.
Well, George Lucas's original Star Wars was the pioneer for CGI.
Absolutely. And what did you think of the visuals in The Acolyte?
It's horrific, is probably the best word to describe it. We've openly criticized this on many of the new Star Wars projects and even other movies like the Batman, and Mando did this a lot even in its early seasons, is the use of the volume, which it astounds me that Disney continues to use, and a lot of recent motion pictures tend to use this volume because it looks horrendous. It looks so bad.
For those who perhaps don't know what the volume is, essentially instead of using a green screen, which is the what Hollywood's been doing essentially since George Lucas released the prequel trilogy, green screen has been the go-to for visual effects and blending in the green screen with the real-life sets. The volume is an LED screen that is put in on the soundstage. And it worked quite well in Mandalorian Season 1. Greg Fraser obviously pioneered it. And he went on to use it in Season 2 and then in the Batman. And those are probably the best uses for it. You can use it sparingly and use it well at some stages. But since he has sort of left Star Wars, Disney have just taken it and really abused it and used it as an excuse to not shoot on location or invest in CGI budget.
It's lazy. And it's insane to think of it as being lazy when a project like this has $180 million.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Where did that money go?
It's poof, it's thin air. What does he say? It's fairy dust.
Yes. It didn't go into the costumes because we didn't like the costumes. They were far too clean. The Jedi robes looked really thin. No real texture to them.
No.
Just the whole representation of the Jedi in this show is just really disrespectful. It's clearly portraying the Jedi as not a force for good, as an order that takes children against their will, and they really haven't been shown to be competent or heroic in any way. Let's think back to Luke Skywalker, the first Jedi that we ever knew. Obi-Wan Kenobi, the original Obi-Wan Kenobi, Alec Guinness. That's some heroic stuff there. And now we have child catchers and just how the Jedi represent. Anyway, lots of money being spent. I'm not really seeing the value in any aspect here.
No. And it really, the question is that we should be asking is, where is this money being allocated? Because it's not to the VFX department, it's not to the costumes department, it's not to the staff involved in it, because everyone involved in this is a whole lot of nobody.
Yeah, the writers aren't well known or good.
They're getting paid like pennies, so where is this money going? Like, is this going straight into Leslie Headland's account? Is this going into some offshore account that we don't know of?
Because it's clearly not on screen. The only other explanation for it is just the gross incompetence of Lucasfilm. They haven't really proven themselves, except for perhaps Andor, to be a studio that can actually produce a TV show. This is not a TV show. This is a really bad movie that has been a really bad, maybe hour and a half length movie that's been cut up into 15 to 20 minute chunks and purposed into some sort of TV show type format. Put an intro in, put 5 minutes of credits in, and call it a day. So I think they've just shown that they can't do it. I think they just have to give up the TV show format.
they're rewriting Star Wars for what purpose we don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
It's blatantly disrespectful to the source material.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an abomination of a TV series, irrespective of it being a Star Wars show. It doesn't work as a show.
As a normal show.
I
can't imagine if you're not a Star Wars fan, first of all, you're not going to watch this, because why would you?
Yeah.
But even if they did, I can't imagine they're getting past the first episode. It's just boring.
It's boring.
Especially when there are good shows coming out nowadays.
It's senseless. It doesn't know what it's doing. It's predictable.
Mm.
There is a slew of things wrong with this so-called show that it's just impossible to think that this is $180 million.
Mm. We've discussed sort of the elements of the show, in the sense that we're looking at it as a perspective of a show in itself. Let's talk of it now just as a Star Wars product, as a piece of the Star Wars franchise. What effect do you think this has on Star Wars as a whole, and is it a valuable contribution to the Star Wars lore?
So, Star Wars Theories, I kind of like his take on it when he says that the original 6 episodes are sort of untouchable. Like, they're always going to sort of remain protected because there is a core fan base there that is like die-hard Star Wars fans. And you have a lot of Star Wars fans that have just sort of decanonized everything post Return of the Jedi, or more so the Clone Wars. So for me, it's sort of like everything created since then is just fluff, and they're really just messing around with the IP. In saying that, I don't think Star Wars can be redeemed now. I don't think they can release a movie and it's going to perform well in theaters because, let's face it, these numbers are probably terrible. Like, no one's watching this. And we've seen that. We've seen that there was a huge drop-off in viewership in Mando Season 3. And it's a declining viewership per episode as well. Mm. Like, there's a peak on episode 1 and then it just falls off. And I think that's the reason why these movies aren't getting made, is because they know that the fans have no faith in their skill set, in how they treat this IP. Mm. So, to answer your question, it's irredeemable at this point.
Mm. Absolutely. And bringing legacy characters in, they've made a habit out of this now at Disney, with the various cameos and jangling of keys. In this series, they seem to have chosen a new victim, and that victim is Jedi Master
Ki-Adi-Mundi,
who is the Jedi who everyone's been quoting recently, because he is the Jedi in Phantom Menace that completely dismantles the Acolyte's reason for existing, because he is the Jedi that turns and says to Master Yoda and Master Windu, hang on, Qui-Gon Jinn must be a bit nuts here. He's telling us he fought a Sith Lord. The Sith have been extinct for a millennia. So that's a millennia.
Mm-hmm.
This series is set 100 years before The Phantom Menace.
Yep.
And we have Ki-Adi-Mundi obviously in the show, which doesn't make sense because he's supposed to be about 80 years old during The Phantom Menace, so do the math on that. It's not mathing.
It's not mathing.
Leslie Headland obviously forgot to check that bit, and Dave Filoni forgot to check that bit when he signed off on it, but I feel as though they specifically selected him because of that quotation in The Phantom Menace, and I feel like a decision like that can only be made out of spite, and I found that quite disrespectful to George Lucas's legacy, really.
And that's the crux of the issue is these things that they do in this series, you know, setting it within that timeline and adding Ki-Adi-Mundi and doing all these things that bring down the original trilogy and the original 6 films and George Lucas's creation, the canon. It brings down the canon. These issues are so easily fixable.
Yep.
Set it outside of that timeline. Don't include Kiadi Mundi. If you want to tell your own stories, tell your own stories. Why are you throwing in these legacy characters? These issues are so easily fixable, but yet they're so determined to do these things.
And let's not forget that there are people that are paid to supposedly check these things. To check, okay, let's take a look at... I mean, all you have to do is look up on Google. Look the character up and see what the age is listed on Wikipedia. And then have a look at the various comics, or maybe someone provided an age for him somewhere. But they seem to have no care whatsoever for the source material there. So that was really disappointing. But putting that to the side, the show is awful. I don't think I enjoyed a single character interaction because it was all so wooden and so mechanical and just leading so heavily just on that central plot line, which was confusing, which had conflicts and plot holes and all sorts of just rubbish. Look, the writing of this show was the thing that killed it, not necessarily the disrespect for the lore. So anyway, if you have any other thoughts, what rating would you give the Acolyte so far? Obviously, we're talking mid-season, so let's not forget the next 4 seasons could be great. I mean, next 4 episodes.
4 seasons, my God.
Goodness, I hope we don't get 4 seasons of this. I know, well, we won't get a second season anyway, so it's not a problem.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you could give this a rating of some kind, where does it sit for you?
There was nothing I enjoyed in it. It's an F. It's a fail. It's
a 0 out of 10.
It's a 0 out of 10. It's the worst of the worst. We hated the Book of Boba Fett. We hated Obi-Wan Kenobi, but there was things in them that we could somewhat enjoy.
Yeah.
It is insane to say that there is nothing in the Acolyte that makes it worth watching. And I think you're on the same page.
Absolutely agree. There was nothing. I mean, obviously, when you start watching a new show or a new movie, if you look at your maybe a 0 to 10 rating, you're starting off at 0 because you haven't seen anything yet. And we just finished watching the 4th episode, and I still haven't really seen anything yet.
Yep. And
it's a 0.
Yeah, I think the way maybe to end this is, there's going to be criticism, right? There might be people in the comments that say, well, why are we watching it then? And we're entitled to share our opinions. We're lifelong Star Wars fans. We would love to see this IP prosper. But we want to discuss this because this is a huge turning point in the franchise, and with this IP, this effectively is the death of Star Wars.
Absolutely. I can't think of a better note to leave it on. This is obviously our mid-season review, so we're going to do a few other separate videos now, so look for those on the channel if you're interested. We're going to be having some predictions, making some predictions for the last 4 episodes in a separate video, and we're also going to be doing a further video about what we would do if we were thrust into the CEO chair of Lucasfilm at this very moment.
Yep.
So look for those on the channel. Thanks for listening, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Check out those other videos, and we'll catch you next time.
See you later.